Now, quite often, when we want to raise an event, we also want to send some data about that event. For example, in our logger module, when we log a message, perhaps our remote login service will generate an ID for that message. Perhaps we want to return that ID to the client. Or it may give us a URL to access that logged message directly. So here, when raising an event, we can add additional arguments, which we refer to as event arguments. So we can add an ID, like one, and we can add a URL. But as you can see, these magic values here are a little bit confusing. If you want to send multiple values about an event, it's a better practice to encapsulate those values inside an object. So here, we add an object, we give it a couple of properties like ID, we set it to ID of this message that is logged, and another property URL like this, okay? So we refer to this object as event argument. Now, when registering a listener here, this callback function, this actual listener, can also receive this event argument. So here we add a parameter called arg. You can call it anything. The name doesn't matter. But by convention, we often use arg, or some people use e to refer to the event, or event arg. Whatever you prefer is perfectly fine. So here we have arg. Now, let's log it on the console. Very simple. Let's run this application. So node, okay, look, listener called, and here's our event arg. And with this technique, we can pass data about the event that just happened. Now, one last thing to make this code a little bit simpler. In ES6 or ECMAScript 6, we have this feature called arrow function. With an arrow function, we can get rid of this function keyword. So here we have the arguments, and after that, we have the body of that function. Now, to separate the two, we use an arrow, and that's why we call this arrow function. You can see this syntax is a little bit simpler, and a lot of people prefer to use arrow functions in ES6. Now, here's a simple exercise for you. Let's imagine in our logger module, just before calling our remote service to log the message, we're going to raise an event called logging. And while raising this event, we also want to send some data. That is the message that we're going to log. So what I want you to do is to use what you have learned in this lecture and raise and handle this logging event. It's a very simple exercise. I just want you to get used to this syntax.